Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us at this Your Overseas Home virtual event. My name is Mari and I'm one of the account managers here at Your Overseas Home. Today we are joined by Seyran from Holborn Assets, who will be talking us through the Golden Visa in Cyprus. We do invite you guys to ask as many questions as you like. There is a questions tab bottom right of your screen. Any that we don't get round to, I'll be passing on to Seyran to answer. Just before we start the presentation, Seyran, welcome. How are you?
Thank you very much, Mari. I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for having me today. Really appreciate the opportunity.
It's a pleasure, thank you. So if you're happy just to start by introducing yourself and Holborn Assets.
If you could go to the next slide, if you don't mind.
Yep. Oh,
Oop, oop.
it's moving quickly.
Yeah,
Oh,
there we go. There we go. Up and running. So morning, everybody. My name is Cyprus. I'm a registered CFP, and I've got about 25 years experience in the financial industry, specializing in offshore investment and relocation. I'm a regulated senior associated financial advisor with Holborn Assets, and I'm based in Paphos in Cyprus. Holborn, for those of you who don't know, we are a multi-award winning financial services company, and we've been in business for about 25 years. And we have more than 250 advisors operating in 18 countries, and we manage more than $2 billion of our clients' assets. Personally, in Cyprus, I specialize in people moving to Cyprus from all over the world. Next slide, please, Mari. So I thought just to start off, I will give you a bit of background on Cyprus and what are the attractions and why should you have a look at Cyprus. So our island is very beautiful and we've got fantastic weather. We've got more than 300 days of sunshine every year, and we've got very mild winters, although about 2 weeks ago it was colder in Paphos than what it was in Lampeter in Wales. We've got stunning beaches and mountains. You can even go skiing in the morning and swimming in the afternoon. And there's wonderful hiking opportunities, and mountain biking is becoming quite a big sport in Cyprus as well. We've got a fantastically safe country, very low crime rates, and they are very nice, warm communities, both expats and locals, and we have a very relaxed lifestyle. You'll notice when you come and visit us. We are very strategically located, so we just about in the middle of the world, very easy access to Asia, Africa, and the rest of Europe. And we're a unique blend of Middle Eastern and European cultures in Cyprus. One of the big advantages of our island, especially for UK and US residents, is that English is a lingua franca. You can get by with English just about everywhere, especially in business. And we've got a very good, reliable infrastructure, like good roads. We've got very good healthcare, and we've got good schools as well. And international universities are basing themselves in Cyprus now as well. From an economic point of view, we've got low taxes, no inheritance tax, very important if you're thinking of moving here from the UK. And we've got very attractive corporate rates. Our corporate rates are some of the lowest in Europe. It's an entrepreneurial-friendly environment, easy to register a company, and fairly easy to administer the company. Next slide, please, Mari. Some of our key attractions is it's a very flexible residency scheme, as we'll see, Mari, when we chat a little bit later. There are quite a few options. For EU members, freedom of travel, and if our Minister of Foreign Affairs is to believe, we will be very soon joining the Schengen scheme, and that would make it a lot easier for everybody else to travel from here as well. If you are a history or a cultural buff, Cyprus is a fabulous place. We've got a very long history, and there's some fantastic ruins to go and see, archaeological sites. And then, of course, as a country, we have got a unique and vibrant local traditions, and we've got some fantastic separate food as well. As mentioned before, we've got a really good health system. Our public health system works really well. They're very short waiting times to see doctors and have operations. And then there's a very good private health system as well. On the schooling side, we've got very, very good international schools which offer diverse curricula. And we have got several international universities who are also based out of Cyprus. And then, of course, Cyprus is a haven for everybody who's thinking of retiring somewhere in the sun. And for the obvious reasons, we've got a very favorable taxation system, a fantastic lifestyle. And then, of course, a lot of people consider Cyprus as well because of the high healthcare and the climate. Next slide for us, please, Murray. So what, everybody always asks, what are some of those tax benefits? So we've got a very progressive income tax system with rates ranging from 0 to 35%. The first 19,500 euros every year is tax-free. We've got some exemptions on foreign income, so there's no tax on dividends interest for non-domicile residents for the first 17 years. And then the big one really is foreign pensions are taxed either at a flat rate of 5% over amounts of 3,420, or if it's beneficial to you, you can choose to use the normal income tax rates if that is a lower rate. If you have non-domicile status, which is a very easy thing to achieve, then you don't have to make the contribution to the special defense contribution, which effectively means that dividends and interest and rental income from abroad is tax-free for the first 17 years. We also have a income tax exemption scheme for new residents, where if you earn over £100,000 a year, you will only pay tax on 50% of that for the first 17 years. And there's also a lower scheme where you will only pay tax, with a 20%, so you'll only pay tax on 80% of your income. Next slide, please, Murray. And then, of course, corporate tax, quite a big one. We've got a flat rate of 12.5%, doesn't matter how much you earn. And then there's no inheritance tax, no wealth tax, no gift taxes, which is ideal to preserve the value of your assets. We've got double tax treaties with over 65 countries, very important, especially if you are thinking of moving from the UK and the changes of the inheritance tax from next year, very beneficial. And then on new build properties, if it's going to be your primary residence, then our VAT rate, instead of being 19%, 5% for the first 200 square meters. If you're buying something bigger than that, then you're going to pay 90% on the extra bit. We've got no capital gains tax on foreign gains, and there's a limit of 20% tax on Cyprus property sales. So there is capital gains on Cyprus property sales, but if you are moving here, buying a property to stay, then obviously that's not going to be an issue for you. So to summarize the basics, it's a retire-friendly country to come and retire in. We've got favorable taxation, and with the access to the non-domicile benefits, it really is an enticing place, and I think worthy of your consideration to move to Cyprus. And on the next slide, Mari, if you move there, if you have any questions, if you're thinking of moving to Cyprus, please give me a call. I'll be more than happy to assist you and answer your questions. And maybe you'll be my neighbor in Cyprus pretty soon.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So are you able just to run us through the process of applying for a golden visa and like the eligibility requirements?
Absolutely. So the eligibility to qualify, you have to buy a new build property of £300,000. You can also invest £300,000 in a Cyprus company, or alternatively, you can invest £300,000 in a Cyprus unit trust, or you can actually buy a commercial property to the same value of £300,000. And then you have to have a clear criminal record. This is a certificate issued by the police in your country. You need to have proof of income, and there's a minimum income requirement of €50,000 in the country where you are currently living. You have to have health insurance in Cyprus, so you have to take out health insurance in Cyprus. You need to buy a new build property or make one of the investments, you need a confirmation from your bank in Cyprus that you have moved money from a bank outside of Cyprus into Cyprus. You have to sometimes have an affidavit for confirming that you're not going to be employed in Cyprus, because the Cyprus residency doesn't give you the right to work in Cyprus. You can, however, own your own company and you can be a director of that company. And those are the basic requirements, pretty simple for the residency scheme.
So once you get residency, does that lead to the possibility of citizenship?
Yes, absolutely. So under the residency scheme, you have to be, after you've been in Cyprus for 5 years out of an 8-year cycle, you can apply. So if you move to Cyprus straight away and stay for 5 years, after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. There's a requirement that the last year you have to be in Cyprus for the full year, but the Cyprus government actually makes allowances for traveling for business. But the majority of the time, you're going to have to be in Cyprus for your 5th year, and then you can apply for Cyprus. And then it takes about 18 months to get your citizenship. You can actually, there's now a new scheme where you can pay extra and you can get the citizenship within 6 months. But if I remember correctly, that's about 10,000 euros per person.
So then for our audience, could you just do a quick overview on the differences between residency and citizenship?
Yes, okay, and there's a big difference between them. In practice, in country, it's not a big difference. So if you with residency, you obviously can't vote, and if you've got a passport, you can vote. If with residency, if you are a non-EU citizen, it will mean that you will have to still apply for visas to travel to Schengen area and some countries where visas are required, based on your home country, not on Cyprus, where if you have a Cyprus passport, there's 297 odd countries, visa-free travel all through Europe, basically, China, the USA, yeah, those are the basic differences. I mean, in practice, there isn't a very big difference between the two. You could easily stay in Cyprus and never become a citizen. But if you're like me and you come from South Africa, then citizenship makes sense.
If you're happy to, I've just had a question come through from our audience. So, yeah. Carolyn, thank you for your question. She'd like to know, a property of over 4,000 square meters, I was told we would need to set up a business. Would this count as a commercial property if over £300,000?
The property, it would not count as a commercial business. It'll depend on what the property is. If your house can be 1,000 square meters and it will still be a personal house. A business property or a commercial property has to be zoned as commercial in Cyprus to be a commercial property. And it's irrelevant whether you make the investment in a private property or a commercial property. But from the information that you've given me, that will not be a commercial property. It will be domestic property, personal property.
Thank you. So could you just run us through a timeline of how long the process might take? So someone outreaches you for your assistance, what would be the steps involved?
Right. Okay. So that's an interesting question, because obviously there's a few steps that have to be taken. So I think the first step that needs to be is the gathering of the documentation, as I outlined: copy of passport, income, criminal record, the proof of income, title deeds of the property that you bought, the proof that you bought the money from outside. That usually takes, depending on the person supplying them, of course, anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. Once we've got those documents, then the documents have to be examined. We have to examine it by the civil registry and migration department. If they're happy with it, they then send that through to the Ministry of Interior, and the Ministry of Interior then approves it. So you're looking at about between 2 to 6 weeks for the preparation or the gathering of the information. 2 to 3 months. It could be 6 months. It depends on, and at the moment it's closer to 6 months because there's quite a high rate of application for the submission and approval. And then about another 13 to 40 days to actually get your resident pass. So you're looking between 3 if you're very lucky and 8 months if you're unlucky for the entire process.
Okay. So then, other than the cost of the investment or the property itself, what other fees would someone look to
Well,
counter?
so there's government fees, and the government fees include the cost of the application, which is 500 euros per person.
Yeah.
There's the card fee, that's 70 euros per person. And then one of the big fees is the legal fees. You have to work through a legal firm to do the application, and that is anywhere between 3,000 and 10,000 firms. There's quite a wide range. Some firms charge more, some charge less. And then, of course, the thing that you need to keep in mind, it's 300,000. The investment is 300,000 euros plus VAT. So provided your property is for personal use and smaller than 200 square meters, then the VAT is 5%. And if it's bigger than 200 square meters, then it'll be 5% for the first 200 meters and 19% above that. If it's a commercial property, or if it's a property that's not big, that you intend to rent out, it's 19%. Then you have to have health insurance. That's going to be anything between 300 to 1,000, depending on your own personal circumstances, per annum. And what have I left out? And then, of course, Cyprus requires a lot of documents to be apostilled or to be translated. And you can look at about an extra 500 to 1,000 euros for that. So if you look in total, if you're spending 300,000 on a property before that, if you include that and all the costs, it should cost you somewhere between 315 to 330 in total. So between 15 and 30,000 in total for extra costs.
So are those costs for one applicant, or are you able to put family members on your application for the visa as well, and those costs are included?
Not Christmas. So that's for one applicant. So,
you never know.
yeah, it's a good try. Yes, you can add. So you can add, obviously, your spouse. You can add all your children younger than 18 years.
Mhm.
And in fact, Cyprus allows children older than 18, up to the age of 25, provided that they can prove that they are students or that they are dependent on their parents. You can even add your own parents and your spouse's parents. But there's additional costs involved there. So you would, if you want to add your parents, for instance, or any other dependents, you have to show additional income in the country where you are. And then the basic costs, like the 500 euros for the application fee, the 70 euros for the card fee, all of that will be included. Between 3 to 10,000 euros per for legal fees. Those will all obviously be additional costs. Obviously, you won't have to pay additional VAT. You can actually, and this is interesting as well, people forget, you can actually buy two properties as long as your minimum value is more than 300,000. So you could buy a property for yourself and your parents, and provided that you can show the additional income in your home country, all of you could move to Cyprus.
Wow, that's a good
Yeah,
bonus.
it's a very generous scheme, actually.
So just another question come in. What is classed as a new build property exactly?
So exactly what it says on the can, and it's got to be a property that has been built in the last 24 months or currently being built. So if you buy off plan, obviously that's a new build, but there are properties that are specifically developed and they get registered by the developer with the government, and all of those properties will be a new build. If someone else has owned it, if the property has been registered before, then it's not a new build. It's on the secondary market, and that generally will not qualify. There are exceptions, but general rule is those will not be able to qualify for the scheme.
And then Antonio has asked, what if I have just purchased an apartment for 220,000 euros in Cyprus under an EU passport? Can I still get residency so that I can use the doctors, healthcare, etc.?
Well, if you have got an EU passport, you don't have to worry about the residency scheme with it. If you had an EU passport and you bought it, so let's say you've got a German passport and you bought the property, once you move to Cyprus and you come and live in Cyprus, you register at the Department of Internal Affairs, and then you register for YESI, which is our national health system, and you can go ahead from there. If you had, for instance, a British passport, not an EU passport, you would have to buy an additional property to make up the difference between the 300,000 plus that and the 200,000 that you've already spent. But if you did do that, yes, absolutely, you can then qualify for the residency scheme again, and you can become part of the national health system.
Thank
And
you.
in fact, it's a requirement that once you come and stay in Cyprus, that you have to make these payments to the national health system. So everybody who comes in the residency automatically has to become a member. And it's a really, at the moment, it's a fantastic system. If you come from the UK, you'll love it.
I'll see you there. We've got another question. So once I've purchased a property and have residential status, is it permitted to rent out the property for short-term lets when I'm not in the country?
So this is the other nice thing about the Cyprus residency scheme, is that you don't actually have to come and live in Cyprus to qualify for the scheme. You just need to be in Cyprus for 1 day every 2 years.
One day.
And that is to update your biometrics. So usually what happens is your residency permit gets issued, your card gets issued with a 2-year expiry date. And provided that you come and visit Cyprus once within the 2 years, and redo your biometrics and reapply for the card, then you don't actually have to live in Cyprus at all. So you can rent out your property, but remember you're going to be paying 19% VAT on such a property instead of 5%. And if you have already bought a property and you paid your 5% and you've never lived in it, when you try and sell it, I can guarantee you that the Cyprus government are going to say, thank you very much, but you now have to pay the difference between the 19% and the 5%, because you should have paid 19% in the beginning. It's just something to keep in mind.
So when would you recommend someone contacts you for advice? Would it be during their research stage or when they found something they like the look of?
Ideally, I would suggest when you start thinking coming to Cyprus at the research stage, because there are some pitfalls that one needs to keep in mind. Cyprus is a sovereign country, and it has a culture of its own, and it's got a business culture of its own. And there are some things that you need to be on the lookout for when you are purchasing property in Cyprus. Especially, one of the biggest things is that there are title deeds, and that the title deeds are Greek Cypriot title deeds, that they're actually in place. We're an ancient country. Properties have been handed down for millennia, so you could find that you buy a property, but you're only buying a portion of a title deed. So I would suggest once you start thinking Cyprus is maybe a destination, and we can hold your hands through the entire process. So we can find the properties for you, and even if you find your own property, you can come to us and we can vet those properties for you, which I would strongly suggest, so that you make sure that you have 100% confidence in the purchase that you are making. Cyprus in the past had a bit of a reputation of people having buyer's remorse because not all of the details have been disclosed right up front, and that's where I come in. I make sure that you can be 100% sure that the purchase that you are making is going to be 100% above the board, and you're not going to have any issues. And like I said, we can help you find the property. If you haven't looked at your own property, we can give you advice of where to buy in Cyprus. We will then hold your hand every step of the way. We'll vet your documents before we submit it. We'll do the submissions for you. We will follow up. We will do introductions to the schools to you. We can introduce you to sports clubs, community clubs. It's a full service, basically. So I would suggest as soon as you possibly can.
Amazing. We had another question come through. Do we need a Cypriot bank account prior to the house purchase?
Yes. So part of it is you don't actually. I correct myself. You don't need a Cypriot bank account before you make the purchase. So you can buy the property directly from your UK or South African or American bank account. But if you then apply for the residency, you have to have a separate bank account. And of course, that's something we'll hold your hand all the way as well. So applying for a bank account in Cyprus can sometimes make you grow hair on your teeth. But we'll hold your hand as long as you know what you're doing. Then it's not too bad. But yes, so you can buy you don't need a separate bank account when you're buying. But if you want to apply for residency, yes, that is a separate bank.
So for like an exit strategy, if someone were to decide to sell their investment or their property and move to another country, what would be the implications for that on their residency status?
So if you sell your property in Cyprus, then you will lose your residency. So what you can do is you can sell your property and buy a more expensive property or another property with same value. But for as long as you want to be a resident of Cyprus, you have to own a property, and it has to be at least a minimum of 300,000. Now, what a lot of people do is they come over for a holiday quickly, they come and have a look, and they haven't had someone guiding them a little bit, so they buy a property, and then they soon find out, well, actually, another location makes more sense. There's more sense of community. There's more expats or whatever they want for them. And then a lot of sales happen where they resell and then rebuy. And as long as you keep property and own it, you can keep your residency. Of course, if you end up applying for a passport and you get a passport, then it doesn't matter. But for the residency scheme, you unfortunately have to keep that property.
And so before we wrap up today, what would be your top 3 tips?
First tip, most important tip, is find someone that you are comfortable with and that you feel that you can trust with a track record to help you. Secondly, make sure that the property that you're looking for has got the correct title deeds. There's no incumbencies on it. It is worth paying the money to get a lawyer that you trust to verify this. And thirdly and lastly is check the prices. Don't just come to me and accept that my price is going to be. I'm certainly not the cheapest, but I'm also not the most expensive. But the prices vary. Attorneys can charge, like I said, up to 10,000 euros a application, and it's too much. So just do yourself a favor, ask around, get 2 or 3 people to give you a price, and then you go with the one that you feel most comfortable with.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for being part of today's session, Sabran. It's been amazing to have you. Buying a home in Cyprus is very exciting, and having the correct information and guidance makes the process a lot easier. Thank you for all your questions today as well. Any that we haven't got round to, I'll be passing on to Sabran to follow up with. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining, and a recording of this session will be available online afterwards, so feel free to watch back. And thank you very much, Sabran, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you for the opportunity. And I will encourage everybody. Cyprus is a fabulous place to come and live and make your home.
Amazing.
Contact me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.